After spending my first day in Utah focused on scouting for fall color, I was anxious to start the next day. Initially, my photography was thwarted by overcast skies. Thin clouds passing overhead blocked enough of the morning sun to make shooting a challenge as I sat high atop Highway 12, looking down into the rugged valleys and winding canyons filled with cottonwood trees on either side of the scenic byway. As the morning hours wound on, the light became better, but with the stronger light came stronger wind. That presented a different kind of challenge, as many of the compositions I was trying to work with required the use of longer focal lengths, which make camera shake a significant issue as even the slightest movement is amplified significantly. Fortunately, between breaks in the wind in the morning and clear blue skies in the afternoon, the day turned out to be one of my most productive ever, as I came away with 16 photos that will likely find their way into my portfolio of work. Some are shown at points throughout this video, but be sure to watch to the end to see them all. Once again, I hope you enjoy this look behind the scenes as I photograph fall color in beautiful southern Utah. After what my watch assures me was 9 hours of pretty decent sleep, which I vehemently disagree with, I am up for sunrise. Well, I was up for sunrise. I was up for sunrise. There's some decent color in the sky. Again, no real great compositions, and it didn't really matter anyways, because pretty quickly clouds interfered, which is the situation I find myself in right now. I've got a composition set up. You can see my camera way up there. Trying to get some cottonwood trees that are running along a gully, for lack of a better term, I guess, ravine. Hoping that the tops of them get lit up with sunlight, but let's see if this even shows up. Well, the front camera's not being very kind to it, but you can see there's quite a few clouds interfering at the moment. So I'm beginning to suspect this shot's not going to work, because I basically need the right timing and the right amount of sunlight on the tops of those trees. And honestly, I don't even know if the timing will work out anyways. My hope is, let me see if I can even turn around and kind of get this in here without falling. Where are they? Kind of back over my right shoulder, you can see there's a row of cottonwoods. And my hope would be that maybe the tops of those get some sunlight before the surrounding landscape, but I think the landscape is a little too gentle to cooperate with that. So this is really kind of a wing and a prayer kind of situation here. I'm probably going to give it another 10-15 minutes and then bail if it's not working out. I am going to go back to Burr Trail. Well, let me put a caveat on that. I'm going to go back to Burr Trail after I check the forecast for the area along Cottonwood Canyon Road, just in the off chance that the wind forecast has changed. I don't think it has. I was talking to somebody else. It sounds like Zion is supposed to be getting some pretty bad wind today. Granted, that is quite a distance from Cottonwood Canyon Road. But the area along Burr Trail shouldn't be getting any wind. And actually right now here on Highway 12, it is just about as calm can get. So that's why I want to check the Cottonwood area, or Cottonwood Trail area, Cottonwood Road, whatever the hell it's called. But I'm 90% certain I'll be heading down to Burr Trail. So we'll see. And I'm not feeling real confident about the day. I don't know why. Maybe just because I was pretty restless throughout the night, tossing and turning a lot. But hopefully once I get in, start getting some shots, my mood turns around a little bit. So here's a better look at the composition I was going for. This is almost exactly how I've got it lined up in the big boy camera. But I think I'm going to call it quits. The sun is high enough that it's probably bathing the entire landscape down there, but it's also continued to fight with clouds that are drifting through. So I don't think this is going to work out. I don't think it's going to work out regardless whether there were clouds or not. So I'm going to load up and head on to Burr Trail, I believe. Well, as luck would have it, I gave up on my campsite location, drove down just a little ways, and this little pull off here, found a pretty decent composition. The challenge is I can't do a wide angle because I've got power lines coming through. Now I could, in theory, take a wider angle and clone them out, but I'm not a big fan of doing that. Although I do kind of like the wider angle. But anyways, I'm trying to do a tighter angle on the cottonwoods as they kind of curve around the bend to the right back there. So again, still fighting clouds. So that's presenting a challenge in terms of getting strong enough light on the trees. And then over here, if I cross Highway 12, is a scene that I've been visualizing since I first came up here in March of 2022. On this side, you've got cottonwoods running all through this canyon. Now, many of them are already well past fall color and bare, especially down over on that left-hand side. But you can see there's still some decent color. If I zoom in throughout this particular portion, and then what I'm hoping is that the sunlight gets back in there and lights up the golden leaves while part of that canyon wall is still in shade. And then I'm also looking, I'll need to grab the 100 to 400. I was over here shooting with my second camera and the 24 to 105, but the area kind of right in the center of the frame right now, I think it's got a nice shape to it, and then might be a little hard to pick out, but right in the center there's a big old completely bare cottonwood that's very silvery looking, but at its base is some golden leaves. So I think with the 100 to 400 that can make a nice composition as well. So I might be scrambling here in a bit to get all of this done with the right timing, provided the clouds cooperate. That seems to be my asterisk of the day so far. But this gives you an idea of some of the views along Highway 12 and why it's considered such an iconic scenic drive. So fingers crossed the light cooperates. Feeling a little bit better about the day, now that I'm getting some shots, or I might be getting some shots at least. And we'll see how this goes. I think the sun's getting a little stronger, so I'm going to scramble back over here and see if I can get a shot. Yeah, it is a little stronger, so let's see if we can get that sunlight off the lens. We've got some shots. And a lot of glare there, but you can see the composition I'm working for. And I think actually I need to drop the exposure down. So I'm going to stop recording so I can focus on what I'm doing. What I'm doing here is just blocking the sunlight from hitting the front of the lens. So that I don't have to worry about any kind of flaring or anything like that. Since I've got my handy dandy wireless remote, I can easily do so with no problem. I think I'm going to take one more here. Sun's strengthening up again. All right. And now we're going to scramble back over to the other side. Try to hold this steady here. It's a horrible glare too, but this is that composition I was talking about with that nice shape of the canyon wall, that big old completely bare cottonwood and then some color around it. So once again, I am waiting on the light. I do have my polarizer on the 100-400 right now. It's actually the CPL adapter for the Canon EF to RF mount. I had it on the other side on the previous shot, but since I was facing directly into the sun, it really isn't going to do anything. But now I've got the sun coming in from the side, so I'm able to use that polarizer to cut down on some of the glare and kind of a little bit of the atmospheric haze that's coming into play with the longer lens and get a little bit punchier shot. So again, just waiting on the sunlight. I think we're really close, and hopefully we can get this shot here real soon. I've got the lens extended almost the full 400 millimeters, and I'm only shooting at 1/20th of a second. So right now I'm at f/16 and ISO 400. I might pull that down to f/13 and maybe even boost the ISO up to 640, because at that length, and there is a little bit of a breeze as you're probably picking up on the microphones, at almost 400 millimeter, any kind of little breeze is going to create some shake, especially with that slower camera shutter speed. So I got to be conscious of that, be careful. So let's drop this to f/13. I think things are all far enough away that it's not going to make a difference. We're getting some stronger light now. We'll go up to ISO 640. Let's check there. That gets me up to 1/80th. Just going to take a test shot. Had a little bit of a burst of light, but kind of missed it. Check my composition again. Still got something creeping on the right side of the frame. Adjust this just a smidgen. Oops. Right there. Let's try raising it a bit too. I think I've got the composition dialed in. Now it's just a matter of waiting for the light. Okay, so the wind is starting to pick up. Still haven't gotten any really phenomenal light. Hopefully you can hear me okay over the wind noise. One great thing though about having my second camera body is I can leave my main composition set up here while I'm waiting on the light and run around. I've got my 24-105 on here with a circular polarizer, so I can play with some wider shots, a little bit tighter shots, obviously not anywhere near like the 100-400, but it gives me the opportunity to get some other compositions while I'm standing around waiting, so I'm not just wasting time. And since again, I've got my wireless remote, if I do happen to get light, I can wake up the main camera and fire off a shot, even though I may not necessarily be around it. So helps take off the lens cap. think I might have just gotten the shot. Still not quite as much light on it as I would want, but we're just going to keep waiting around. I do need to watch my time. I want to be down on Burr Trail probably no later than 10, and I think it's 8:30 now. Based on looking at photo pills for that shot of transcendent glow with the foliage in the background, I think my best shot at light there is going to be between 10 and noon. Again, I'm going to need strong sunlight for that, so these clouds really need to clear out, which they're supposed to. So I'm kind of running a balancing / gamble between getting the light here and being too late getting down to Burr Trail, because it's going to take me probably about 45 minutes to get there. So anyways, just keep firing away. Well, I think I got the composition on the other side that I was working on. The light's still not quite where I need it for the second composition on the other side of Highway 12 with those cottonwoods in the deeper canyon. We're getting much stronger sunlight now. It is a little late, but it's giving some really nice glow to the cottonwoods down on this side in the ravine. So I'm going to try to get another composition here. It's tricky because there's a fairly, it's not a cliff, but there's a fairly significant drop off right here in gravel. And I want to try to, might even work to get a little lower. There's a tree probably about a quarter of the way between me and the cottonwoods I want to shoot, and it is interfering with my composition. And it's too close for depth of field, even at f/16. I could focus stack, but it's really not anything I want in the composition anyways. So it's just a matter of trying to work this out and find the right angle. And as luck would have it, there's also some nearby or some closer trees on the right. What I really need is to try to get higher, but if I get up here, I think I'm off the camera now, but if I come up on the road surface or on the shoulder, these grasses start getting in the way. It's just a messy situation to try to work around. Heather, if you're watching this, it's not as sketchy as it may look. I don't know. I don't know. So I think I've mostly eliminated the foreground things that are in the way. Now the clouds aren't cooperating again. Here we go, here we go. As you can likely tell, traffic has picked up quite a bit. And I think I may have gotten the shot. So I think we're going to wrap up here, check back on their side for that second canyon shot, and go from there. I may be holding off on Burr Trail now The color there was pretty early anyways, so I think I've got the opportunity here. The light's working out right now. The wind is cooperating, so I can always come back to Burr Trail tomorrow or the next day perhaps and check that again. So we'll see. Again, just playing it by ear and going with the flow. So I've wrapped up once again on the first side of Highway 12 that I was on, back over here. So over this way, kind of right down in there is that composition I was working on earlier. So now I'm waiting still on the light to get into there. Now, if we look at the back of the camera, I've got the composition set up. Come on, focus. And right now, obviously there's a huge disparity between the brightness on the landscape and the shadow in the canyon. But you can just see right there, the trees starting to get some light. So, still got a ways to wait, but I'm cautiously optimistic this may play out. The one thing that I just kind of realized actually is the light is going to be coming directly onto the front of the foliage, or the side that's facing me, which means we're really not going to get any of that backlit or toplit glow like I was getting on the other side. So we shall see how this plays out. It may be that the foliage just kind of blends in with the interior of the canyon as the sunlight starts getting in there. But we'll see. Hadn't thought about that, but hopefully it still works out. Per my last minute realization, the light on that previous scene did not, in fact, work at all for my original composition. Although I was able to frame up a tighter shot that was focused just on the trees within the shadows of the deeper canyon itself. As so often happens, that secondary framing of the scene ended up as one of my favorite photos from the entire trip. Contrary to my thoughts in that last clip, I did end up heading on to Burr Trail as the light was becoming too harsh up on Highway 12, but the clear sky meant it would be just about perfect to create beautiful reflected light off the rich, warm walls of Long Canyon. Although my hope to recreate transcendent glow with fall foliage did not pan out, the trees were harshly lit while the reflected light in the side canyon was lacking, I still spent about an hour in that location, playing with compositions of foliage against the canyon wall and other small details as the light shifted with the drifting sun. Okay, I'm kind of taking shelter behind the Forerunner here. Contrary to what I had said previously in Burr Trail not being that windy, it has become super windy, as has everywhere, as the windy forecast has finally arrived. So hopefully I'm blocking enough of the noise from the wind with the truck. I'm trying to use the truck as a little bit of a wind buffer for the camera, as I've got a composition I'm trying to shoot in the probably 200 to 300 millimeter range. It's kind of up on the ledges right up there. There's some trees, a little bit of reflected light. There's another composition off to my left that I may work with as well. Not the best time of day to be coming through here. The sun's just not in the right position to get a strong enough bounce light off of one canyon wall onto the other. So I'm really just looking for small scenes where I can take advantage of shapes in the canyon walls and trees and all that good stuff. Now the wind is coming in. So anyways, I don't want to talk on here too long because I'm sure the wind is pretty bothersome. So we'll see what we get here. I think today's going to be challenging the rest of the day. I may just head back to Highway 12, take it on to Torrey, Utah, where it comes to an end. Mainly just scenic drive, sightseeing, whatever. I was up there back in March when it was really super snowy. So I know there's some beautiful views, and just again with the wind, and we've now got clear blue skies. The views are mostly kind of more your grand vista scenes, which would typically benefit from some interesting clouds and things like that. So yeah, again, as has been the theme of this trip so far, I'm just gonna take what comes our way and work with it. So that's where we're at. The unrelenting wind, only worsening as the day wore on, nixed any ideas of recording much video along Burr Trail, but I spent the entire afternoon running around with my camera as the light kept getting better and better as the day progressed. As I've found every time I've explored the area, there were countless opportunities to pull out interesting details within the canyon, especially with the longer focal lengths possible with my 100 to 400mm lens. I stayed in the canyon right up until the sun finally fell behind its walls, calling an end to my day. The wind is literally howling outside. It's not shaking the truck at the moment. Well, now it is. But it's got to be howling through the canyon, or I don't know. This is crazy. I'm in the same camp spot as last night along Highway 12. So I'm up at elevation. It's fairly exposed, although this particular spot's got a little shrubby, bunch of little shrubby trees around, so a little bit of protection there, but this might be a earplugs kind of night. So yeah, anyways, if there's anything you've gotten out of watching these videos so far, is that from a narrative standpoint, I am a completely unreliable narrator. I believe in the last little clip I recorded, I said I was done at Burr Trail and I was going to head up to Highway 12 and take that on down to Torrey. I didn't do any of that. I ended up staying in Burr Trail, or Long Canyon of Burr Trail, pretty much until sunset. I drove all the way to the end of Long Canyon, and as I was coming back, I was fortunate enough to catch scene after scene after scene of good reflected light, or good light in general, that I think I got some pretty good shots, but man, the wind was just killer. I ended up ditching the tripod completely and just shooting at super high ISO. I think a lot of my shots were taken at 3200 or so. So I'll definitely be putting the Lightroom AI DeNoise to test, or to good use. And hopefully the files come out pretty good after that. But it was just unbelievably windy down there. I feel like I'm sunburned, but it's just wind. So regardless of that, the stuff on the back of the camera looks great. It's always going to be interesting to see what it looks like once I get it on the computer, especially shooting handheld at higher ISOs. You know, on the back of the screen or on the back of the camera, everything looks sharp, looks clean, but you never know until you get it on the bigger screen and actually get your hands on the raw files. So we'll see how it actually went. But overall, I'm feeling really, really good about how this day went. Now, tomorrow is still supposed to be windy again. If it's like this, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I may head into Escalante, the town of Escalante, and just, good grief, just camp out at, there's a good little coffee shop and deli in there, Outfitters, Escalante Outfitters or something. Great pizza, great sandwiches. But I may camp out there for a while. I really don't know, because this wind is brutal. I could go down to Cottonwood Canyon Road and just kind of do what I did in Burr Trail and deal with shooting handheld and high ISOs, but the layout there is such that I'd have to be shooting at the long end of probably 200 to 400 millimeters for the most part, and shooting handheld in strong wind could be a challenge. The good news is it's supposed to be sunny, so high ISO wouldn't be too damaging to the files, and I would be using quicker shutter speeds. But anyways, we're just gonna have to continue to do what I've been doing the rest of this trip, or the first 2 days of the trip. I feel like I've been here a week already, but just take it day by day and see what the weather brings me. And yeah, again, go with the flow. So enough of that. I'm gonna grab a bite to eat and get settled down. Hopefully the truck doesn't blow away, and I will see you tomorrow. Although I do love the vibrant trees in this first photo from the day, it ultimately won't be earning a place in my final collection of photos from this fall trip to southern Utah. The composition is somewhat awkward due to the limitations I faced in setting up my camera along the shoulder of Highway 12, where loose gravel and rocks sloped sharply downward the further I ventured from the pavement. The light was also still a bit soft, and the sun possibly too high by the time the clouds did thin out a bit, to get the most out of this scene. This second shot, taken with my backup Canon EOS R on the other side of Highway 12,
is one of my favorites, although I can say that about many other photos from this trip. The soft light created by the thin, drifting clouds overhead worked to my advantage in this case, unlike in the first photo, as the contrast between the shaded foreground landscape and the rugged ground on the far side of the canyon was well balanced, with just a hint of stronger light on that far side. The golden cottonwoods picked up just enough of the sun to glow against the canyon wall that was still partly in shadow. Considering I hung around for nearly an hour, waiting for stronger light on this scene, it's rather ironic that I ended up preferring this particular frame, as it was one of the first that I took after setting my camera on the tripod and dialing in the composition. The frames I made later as the clouds finally started to thin out suffered from too harsh shadows. Instead of helping the trees stand out from the surrounding canyon walls, many of the finer details on the ground below the trees were instead lost in darkness. As I stated earlier in this video, this alternate take on this deeper part of the canyon ended up working far better than my original, wider composition that included the surrounding landscape above. Thankfully, I noticed the soft glow of reflected light just kissing the golden leaves and the darker shadows as direct sunlight began to hit the canyon wall just out of frame to the right. The strong, reflected light on the canyon wall in the background of this image was what I needed to remake transcendent glow with fall foliage. But the trees in the mouth of the canyon were never aglow at the same time as the walls of the canyon. Instead of shutting down with frustration, as I would have early on in my photography journey, I pivoted, literally. This particular composition was found slightly to the right of my planned frame. The contrast of light and shadow, warmth and coolness, and intersecting textures all drew my eye, and the tree helps bring all those contrasting features together into a cohesive whole. Stepping back from that same tree a bit, and facing the canyon wall more directly, I wanted to make a wider photo to show off more of the details in the wall itself. Still retaining the play of textures and the warm, cool split, this wider view also showcases an element from a photo I made back in 2022 in the top center of the frame called Canyon Shockwave. Although that swooping rock feature is not the central subject, I liked the idea of including a subtle callback to that first visit to Burr Trail. After initially working on wider compositions, I spent a fair bit of my time at the same location seeking out smaller scenes. While many of them didn't pass the culling stage once I was back home, this particular composition still stood out from the others. Admittedly, I did not find this scene naturally. In a very rare instance of creating a scene, I purposefully placed this nicely shaped cluster of leaves I had found on the canyon floor. When I subsequently noticed this small, narrow ledge with its flatter portion on the right, I felt it was the perfect complement for the leaves. In this image, I did find the leaf here naturally. No intervention on my part this time. This ledge was perhaps a foot or two above the canyon floor, but I carefully framed this composition to exclude the ground, creating a bit of mystery around its actual height. I envisioned a fallen soul stopping their fall into a deeper abyss. There was actually a fair bit of reflected light on the wall below the ledge, and I took a bit of artistic liberty, something I feel more comfortable doing with smaller scenes like this, to darken it down in post to enhance the sense of depth beyond the rocky shelf. I suspect this image may be a bit polarizing. Indeed, of the few people I shared it with beforehand, it received a mixed reception. Once I felt satisfied that I'd exhausted the potential of the small side canyon, I decided to just play around a bit at its end, where the two walls converged with the opening to the sky high above. I wasn't terribly thrilled with any of the handheld frames I captured here, until I tried flipping this one to black and white. By increasing the contrast in the canyon walls and emphasizing the glow of the sky, the photo seemed to come to life with a strong sense of movement from the bottom and sides up to the promise of light at the top. Finally, we come to the last photo I made at my first stop along Burr Trail this day. Throughout the larger canyon, one can find several giant, gnarled cottonwood trees. This particular one called out to me as the thinning leaves helped show off its amazing structure more than if I'd arrived a week or so earlier when its canopy was still fuller. Strong sunlight was reflecting onto its trunk from the sandy ground, helping to counter the brightness of the leaves and sky, creating a balanced frame throughout. Shown earlier in this video, this photo is worth talking about. The rocky outcropping running along the canyon wall, with the small group of trees atop it, caught my eye as I was driving through Long Canyon. The scene was getting just enough reflected light off the surroundings to provide some additional richness and depth, and the purplish desert varnish on the wall behind the two leftmost trees, along with the gash running down from the upper left of the top edge of the frame, added to the visual interest. This image is the one I referenced in my 2-camera segment from Burr Trail, off to the left of the prior photo. At a different angle from the last one, the scene was bathed in slightly stronger reflected light, which added some nice depth to the pockets eroded into the rock throughout the bottom third or so of the frame. I also liked how the trees all work together to help guide your eye through the scene, whether you start in the lower left or right, all the way up to the lone tree hiding somewhat in the shadows at the top. As I continued my way through Long Canyon, which winds around back and forth a fair bit, sunlight that initially seemed less than ideal created some stunning plays of light and shadow elsewhere in the canyon. I was also aided by the fact that, even with the passage of just 15 to 20 minutes, the movement of the sun helps the light play dramatically different in a short time frame. The direct sun setting the sheer wall of light is, to me, the main star, but finding the rocky outcropping topped with pines to help provide context and a bit of foundation to the frame helps this photo come together. The added touch of the warmer reflected light in the lower left, which quote-unquote should be in shadow, further speaks to how wonderfully different types of light can all work together in canyons like this. Now here's a total shift in style from most of the other photos I made along Burr Trail and the rest of the trip. Late afternoon, direct sunlight harshly lit these features in the canyon, with the deeper shadows, in this case devoid of much reflected light, serving to boldly emphasize the shapes and textures. This is an example of a scene that didn't work particularly well in color in my mind's eye, but I knew it would likely come to life in black and white. While this one may not fit in with the rest of the images shown here in terms of a portfolio collection, it can certainly stand on its own. Another example of a withered old tree, even more bare than the previous one I shared in this image review. Its stark white branches stand out boldly against the warm canyon wall, while the lingering leaves still offer a clue as to the time of year this photo was made. This chaotic mess of trees and bushes may be my favorite image from my afternoon spent along Burr Trail. The cooler foreground trees and foliage contrast wonderfully with the warm rock face in the background. Once again, mostly bare cottonwoods stand out starkly as well, while their remaining gold leaves provide little pops of color throughout the upper half of the composition. And so, last but certainly not least, we come to the final photo from this fantastic day, captured right before the sinking sun fell behind the rising landscape off to my right. I quickly hopped out of the truck with my camera, once again shooting handheld, to get the photo before the light faded. I chose to go with this black and white edit of the scene, using a red filter profile, to darken the sky, creating balance between it and the shadows that had already crept in along the bottom and lower left of the composition. And with that, thanks for watching. My third day in southern Utah ended up being quite challenging and, in the end, not very productive from a photography standpoint, but everything more than got back on track with day 4. Tune in next week to once again join me behind the scenes in episode 3 of this series. Until next time, take care.